Is it on now? Okay, I had a feeling. Okay. I tried to introduce myself to most of you downstairs, but I am Kaylin. I'm the new curator here at the Wallaceburg Museum. So I just wanted to thank you all personally for coming here on a beautiful Saturday. I know there's a lot of yard sales outside too, so thank you for choosing to be here, whether you're local or Glassfax or glass retiree. Thank you very much. And if you didn't get a chance while we were downstairs, I did put in a special display this week just for this event, and it does feature glass that came out of the catalog, or pieces of actual glass that's featured in the catalog that's getting donated today. So if you want to see some pretty rare stuff, then it's down there as well. And we also have most of the paperweights on display that Glassfax donated in 2008. And we actually found some that were donated prior to that. But because of the Glassfax donation in 2008, we became the largest collection of glass paperweights that day. So definitely check those out. I have a list of which ones are from Glassfax if anyone wants to know. That's it. I'm sorry? I can't hear you. Oh, I will now invite Sue up. Sin, sorry. You're down there.
Sorry, we didn't practice this much. We're flying by the seat of our pants. So as our National Glassfax Director, President, Head Honcho, great researcher, and the sharer of all knowledge, I'd like to invite Sid Lethbridge up to make some comments and a presentation.
I was looking around when Carl was making that introduction, Head Honcho. Where are we? I don't think that's in the job title. Thank you for having us here today to make this presentation to the museum. I've got a few comments I'm going to make before we get to that point. And when I get ready, Roger, I'm going to go like this, okay? Today we're pleased to be here to present the historic Syndenham Glass Company catalog to the Wallaceburg and District Museum. But before that, I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you the origins and objectives of Glassfax and some of our interactions with the museum over the years. As you can tell from the front end, this is our 55th year of existence, and we got started in 1967. Some of you here weren't born in '67, so you won't remember it, but that was a pretty special year because Canada was 100 years old at the time, and we were celebrating the centennial year, and many individual citizens and communities and companies, institutions had centennial projects year-long to celebrate the 100 years of Canada. And Roger, I told you I'd start shaking at some point. I always do this about this time. So, Dominion Glass Company, which had a factory right in this town, as you well know, they had at least two projects that I'm aware of. Maybe they had more. But the first one was a book written by Gerald Stevens called Glass in Canada, 1825 to 1925. And he was given access to the archival materials of the Dominion Glass Company, I presume in Toronto or Montreal, I guess it would have been at that point in time, to do his research and put together the book, which is a history of glass companies and factories in Canada. I don't know, I guess they picked 1825 because that was about the earliest one, and I don't know why they stopped in 1925, but I guess that was kind of an end of an era where some of the factories in Montreal closed, and actually they brought the production of tablewares and blownwares to this factory here in Wallaceburg. The second project was Glassfax, and in December of 1966, Tom King sent out a letter to a number of people he thought might be interested in forming an organization to study glass in Canada. And the letter says, "You might be interested to know that early in January, an association is going to be formed and coordinated from my office to loosely bring together all the interested Canadian glass collectors with the purpose of exchange of information, the writing of occasional papers, and the chance to exchange pieces of glass between collectors." Now, who is Tom King? He was one of the executives of the Dominion Glass Company. I believe he was the corporate secretary. And so Dominion Glass gave him a budget for his centennial projects, and he used that to kick off Glassfax. In early January, I guess constitution isn't the right word for this, but essentially it's an outline of what Glassfax goals and objectives were, how they were going to form, what the executive might look like, what membership requirements were, and this was published and shared with people that were interested. Mr. King was member number 1. I've got his membership form in our archives in the basement of the Lethbridge Glassfax archives. And he was member number 1, January 3rd, 1967, which is probably the first day of work after the new year. It was a long document. I'm not going to read it all to you, but today Glassfax is still alive and well, and what we're a friendly association of Canadian glass enthusiasts, collectors, and researchers. We're dedicated to the study of glass manufactured and used in Canada prior to Confederation and right up to the present day. That includes the history of places like the Syndenham Glass Company, Dominion Glass, Dom Glass, and what was Libby St. Clair, and other. But it also includes glass artists, people that made paperweights and canes, all things of interest to the history of glass in Canada. The objectives of Glassfax, and we're demonstrating them today through this donation, to encourage interest in the preservation and the history of Canadian glass, and that's what bringing this to the museum does. It preserves that history. To encourage the exchange of information between members and non-members, and we're going to have the opportunity today and we've had the opportunity, we're going to have more of it, to interact between Glassfax members and people that worked in the factories here, and to share information and to learn. That's just amazing what you can find out sitting there. I was talking with Roger downstairs, and we were talking about how they tore a furnace down here, and that was actually different to the way I worked at Fiberglass Canada. It was different than the way we did it, a little bit different, but similar brute force methodology to get the glass out of the furnace. And to assist newcomers in this field in acquiring knowledge and a deep appreciation of the beauty and artistry found in many forms of glass. So we work at encouraging our members and others to participate in these events. So what are some of the things, how have we interacted with the Wallaceburg and District Museum over the years? Well, probably the first time that I remember, and maybe there was some before that too, but the first one I remember is the Wallaceburg Cut Glass Works 1914 catalog, which was donated in 2001. I don't have color scans, I've only got grayscale. This catalog came up on eBay. Somebody in the United States was selling it, and we decided we were going to go after it, but we weren't very good at bidding at the point in time, and we did not win the bid. But the bid was won by the American Cut Glass Association, and immediately after the auction, I emailed them and said, "You won the bid fair and square, but that catalog belongs in Canada. It shouldn't go to the United States," which is, they're a good organization. They preserve the history. They had a mission of buying up cut glass company catalogs, which we support, but I said that the catalog should be here. they came back and said, we would like to copy it, and then you can purchase it from us for what we paid for it. So it was a lucky thing we didn't bid too high. So it was fairly reasonable. And they shipped it back, and in 2001, it was presented to the museum here. It's an interesting catalog, and it's important because it documents patterns and forms made by the Wallaceburg Cut Glass Company that were, I guess previously were word of mouth. You know, it's come down through a family or people that had worked at the factory. But now we had catalog pages showing the pieces and the patterns. And one of the cool things is that the Gordon pattern, which is the picture on the far side, and then a couple of pieces on this side, that's named after the Gordon family. D.A. Gordon and his son were involved with this glass factory. I haven't done any research, but I don't know whether Bertha is a family name in the Gordon family or not. I think that'd be an interesting thing to find out, whether there's other connections to the Gordon family. That was pretty cool. It is pretty cool. 2008, we had we had a conference, the biannual. Well, we're off our schedule now, as everybody knows, in the last couple of years, but we had a biannual conference, and in 2008, it was held here in Wallaceburg, and it's pretty amazing to come here if you're interested in glass and glass history, because it is just throughout the community. So we toured the cemetery, and Jamie McDougall had little signs out, toured you around, and told you about the people that were buried in the cemetery and their history and how they were connected to the factory. Very cool. We sat in this very room. Judy didn't think so, but this is where we sat. The bottom picture, Jude. And during that conference, 5 paperweights were donated to the museum, and the background in there is we decided we wanted to do something because we were coming here, and reached out to Jamie McDougall, see if he had any ideas for us, because he's a very good friend of the museum. And he put us on to a collection that was being sold out of, I think I can tell the details now. It was kind of quiet at the time, but out of Philadelphia. Again, repatriating stuff from the United States, important pieces of glass from the United States back to where it was made. And now we're preserving that history right here in this building. It is the same, well, I guess it's the same building. We're right over top of the museum, aren't we? Yeah, okay. Those are the 5 paperweights. And here's the 5 young ladies who accepted the paperweights. And Roger tells me that 2 of his granddaughters were in this photo. Jalen? Very good. That was a pretty cool day. It was a nice interaction with the young ladies, and Roger, we got chatting here. He says, "I've met you before." He's got a good memory. So here we are back again a couple of years later. So Roger, it's probably about time to start moving up this way so I can present this. Today we're here to present the Syndenham Glass Company catalog. That's kind of an interesting story how that came about. Jamie McDougall is involved with that as well. And got a message from, there's a light right there. Jamie sent me a text message or a Facebook message or something and said there's a catalog come up for sale. It's pretty important, and maybe Glassfax could go after it and purchase it and donate it to the museum. So we said, great idea. And we did. It was interesting. I've never participated in one of those auctions. It was an online live auction. So you bid, and then you waited a few minutes, and somebody else bid, and then you bid, and then you waited a few minutes, and eventually nobody else bid, and we won the bid. And our Glassfax, our District 3, our District 4, and our District X members all contributed to the purchase of the catalog, and we've brought it here today. I got one more slide. I forgot to show the side of the catalog. There's a couple of pages, and if you're downstairs and you can see the display that's been set up, the beaver fruit jar is downstairs, and several other pieces from the catalog are shown down there. This is an important catalog because of, Jamie tells me there's only two. I have to say I have not seen the other one. I don't know whether the museum has a copy of it or not, but no. So it's even more important because here's an example that we actually are able to present to the museum and share it. You can share it with researchers. Told you I'd be shaken.
I got news for you, so am I.
Okay, good, good. On behalf of Glassfax National, District 3, District 4, and District X, there's a long story there, but I don't want to tell you the whole history of Glassfax. We are very pleased to present this catalog for the Syndenham Glass Company to the Wallaceburg and District Museum. It's a lot smaller than you probably were expecting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were you going to say a few words, Roger?
Oh, I'm not a speech maker because I worked in the front end. And
But
I
he
never
can
make
talk.
speeches. But anyhow,
Come over
thank
here,
you very
Roger.
much for the catalog. We'll put it to good use. It'll come in handy for the people in the office to set up a thing for it. We're proud to have it because anybody that's interested in glass should come and visit our glass gallery. I think we have one of the best in Canada.
You have the best in Canada. Thank you very much.
Is that it?
I think that's it.
Okay, so Roger's not taking it home. For those of you who are not aware, Roger worked at the glass factory for his entire life and dedicated a lot of time to that, and he's also dedicated an incredible amount of time to us here at the museum. I think he's been here every day. Well, not every day, but every year since we started. And I ask him questions on a weekly basis about glass, and he helps me every day. So that's why we asked Roger to accept that. But I have a little speech too, just to tell you how important it is. So it's hard to stand here and try to put into words exactly how valuable this new piece is to the museum. When I first received Carl's email attachment, I sent it to everyone in the museum, and I said, oh my goodness, look at what we got, look at what we're getting, this is so exciting. And all the staff and volunteers replied with the same level of excitement. So it's because everyone who lives in Wallaceburg or near Wallaceburg has heard about the glass factory for some reason. Either we worked there, or had family members that worked there, or you're just aware of the long-standing history of glass in Wallaceburg. So for 105 years, countless beautiful bottles, glasses, whimsies, jars, and more were made right here in Wallaceburg. The factory employed thousands of people over the years and gave Wallaceburg the name, the Glass Town of Canada. In Wallaceburg, we are very proud of this history, and any chance to learn and share more information is very welcome. As curator of the museum in the Glass Town of Canada, it is my job to ensure that the history of the factory is collected and preserved so that future generations can also benefit from that knowledge. As I'm sure our Glassfax friends are aware, sometimes dating turn-of-the-century glass or trying to find out exactly where it came from can be very tricky to do. So already this catalog has helped me to identify multiple items we have in the collection. And in our files, the description has been upgraded from old glass bottle, possibly Sydenham. So now we can look at pictures. Oh, can I go back into one of your slides, Sid? pictures like this, it's actually the beaver jar and the candy jar. We have one. And I found 3 or 4 other already. So, sorry. So now we can confidently say this came from Wallaceburg, 1895-ish. Here's the catalog, here's the proof, and we have a digital and the original. So this is a teaching tool. It'll be preserved here for generations and generations, and we just get to teach more about glass. So again, I can't say how important this piece is really, but on behalf of the museum and people who will learn from it for years to come, I just want to say thank you very much to Glassfax Districts 1, 2, 3, and X. Glassfax, you guys are amazing.
So we'll now turn to the more informal part of the meeting where we have interaction between the Glassfax members and any of the people from Wallaceburg, whether they be workers or they just live in Wallaceburg or related to the glassworker families. And it's all going to be focused around the show and tell items. We're sort of, if you don't mind, rolling the interaction with the glassworkers and the show and tell into one piece, because I think after realizing that it will probably work a lot better that way. So once again, a comment to anyone that may be live streaming. We will take any of your questions via the chat mechanism that exists in the live streaming. Please send in your message. They'll be monitored and forwarded to us, and we'll attempt to answer them as we go through the process. So at this point, I'm going to move the microphone, and we're going to move the focus of the camera down towards the table, and somebody's going to be the first person. Yeah, I'm going to leave it on the stand, though. So, well. On or there we go. It's back on. Okay, so unless somebody wants to come up and volunteer the first piece, and I'm simply going to pick something up and you're going to be it. So I'm going to start with this piece that has the inscription on it, Wallaceburg, the Glass Town of Canada, Dominion Glass Company. Who brought it, and what do they know? David? And so any of the glass workers or anyone here that has additional knowledge to this, please get involved in the conversation, but you're going to have to come up to the microphone.
Thanks, Carl. My uncle came to Wallaceburg in 1967. He purchased the Pontiac Buick dealer, which used to be Daw Motor, and it became Hallmark Motors. And in 1967, there was a flood in Wallaceburg, and made quite an impression on, obviously on the town, but also on me, just to, these types of things happened. As a little kid, didn't really know a whole lot about Wallaceburg, but there was this big flood. So it always sat in the back of my mind. And over the years, and as a teenager, I would come up here. So Terry and I became members of Glassfax and started to learn more things about glass. And we were out one day in one of the antique malls, and I came across this piece of glass. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It's, Wallaceburg Glass Town. Says, I know Wallaceburg, been there. So it came home with me. So coming to the museum, then I find out that, what this is. And I think I will defer to one of your workers to explain a little bit more about what this actually is and comment on what I've got. So would one of you like to comment on it?
this is was actually a tumbler or a drinking glass. Oh, I'm sorry. And it would come out of our machine, and it would be, this is where they handled it. And it would, like a little arm would go around, it would take it, it would invert it, and then gas and oxygen would cut it to make the rim on the glass, and then it would go on into the annealing oven. All glass has to be annealed, by the way. You just don't make it and then put it out in there, or it could combust. And this one was taken, for some reason, taken to the decorating department. It was not cut off. And then this is a spray. This is a ceramic spray that has to be matched to the coefficient of the glass, because if it's not, then the glass will expand at a different rate and it can tear the glass itself. But that's basically it. And this has to be, this acid spray, it has to be fired on too. It has to be fired onto the glass itself.
No. Yeah. You never know what you'll find. I do have a couple of other things to show that. Picking up on the flooding, so another time we were out, and I saw these other tumblers, and it says, Snee Water brings him back, 1936, Wallaceburg, the glass town of Canada. And then I came across one that was in black. So what do? You go home, you go on the internet, and you see what you can find. Nothing. So go downstairs into the museum, lo and behold, these are here. Plus, find out that there's 6 colors available. I've got 2, obviously. And the bring 'em back was for an old boys reunion. And I was looking, I was thinking, oh, rodeo, was there rodeo here? Well, how would this tie in? You know, I can see the boat's there, but how does this tie? So, beauty of having some good information in the museum, you can identify some additional pieces. So, thank you. Don't want to hog the spotlight here, but these are actually my wife's. Tying into what Sid had said, one of the Glassfax conferences, Jamie McDougall was there, and he was doing a presentation on some of the Wallaceburg glasses, whimsies. So he talked about these Wallaceburg whimsy swans. So what happens? We're out going in one of the antique places. What do we find? We find a set of these Wallaceburg whimsy swans. So we have one, another one here with the tail feathers. And then this little guy. All Wallaceburg whimsies. So, you know, nice piece of memorabilia, but other than saying, oh, that's a nice piece of glass, now we know a little bit more about it. And again, you know, within coming to the museum, there are more of them obviously here, and some of you are obviously quite aware of them. So it was, for us, it was kind of neat to have something that tied into, you know, things that I knew as a kid, not knowing anything about the glass other than knowing that Tom Glass was in Wallaceburg and my uncle worked in Wallaceburg. So, you know, here's the tie-in. But just as a amusing anecdote, in terms of the importance of Dominion Glass to the town, but also to the business community. When my uncle came here, he knew that there were some important businesses here. And when the opportunity rose for him to relocate his dealership, where did he relocate the dealership to? It was on the road that led into Dominion Glass, and the brass was also just down the road. So he would always say, my two important sources of customers work here. They go by my door every day going to work. So, you know, you might have looked at the glass business from an employment standpoint, but from a business community standpoint, it was very, very important to him that you worked for Dominion Glass. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Can any of the glass workers add comments to the swans? Did any of you actually make them?
I had spare time when I was a lair tender, and in order to fill in the time between one check and another, I did one of two things. I made patties that tested the color. I had a color to go by. My name's Ron McLean, and I was first hired by the glass company when I got dismissed for dating a cashier at the Met. I went to Loblaws, and the Met closed. I got going very good at the Loblaws, and after hours I changed the ballast and the lights in those days, and I was putting in 70 hours a week when they told me it's going to close. So I walked into Serge Granger, who was the junior personnel manager with Bill Thornton, and he hired me on the spot, knowing that I did the payroll for the Metropolitan Company, and I was in the payroll with 1,287, I remember that number, employees hourly at the glass factory. What year? That would be in 1976, sorry. Yeah, 1976 is when I started there. And at that time it was 1,287 hourly employees. And if you made up the payroll, I never ceased, as long as I worked on making the checks up on Sundays, to realize who was there that I was working with, because 50% of the people never went by their first name. There was Whitey and Blackie and Skipper, names like that. And we called them that, and they knew who they were. But when you get their check and you go, Benjamin, who's Benjamin? Oh, Trampleasure, the Cadillac man. John Domensky, oh yeah, he was the one with the big Lincoln. They never went by their real names until the end of that factory closed. Going back to the swans, I made a few swans. I took a few home. I have none in my collection. My whole collection at the time of the closure of the glass came to the Wallaceburg Museum. But during the time I worked there, I put in 24 years, 6 months, and I tackled Edsel Steen one day, and I said, I want a 25-year watch. And he said, sorry, you're going to work till June. They paid me extra not to go get a job because I was a tank man, and they had to put the tank down by putting holes in it, putting the glass, leaking, molten red. Glass is not, when it's hot, clear. It's molten like a lava. And they shot it into water troughs and shot it out the back, and it was shipped to Toledo like white sugar. So none of the glass from Wallaceburg ever got wasted. I was a watchman there for several years and stopped you at the gate, and you either parked inside or out. I was in quality control for a very small amount of time with Mr. Henderson. But the thing I wanted to discuss with you, since I'm up here, is this little piece of glass. There was my job to make 3 of them when they could be made. Now all the gentlemen on the front end know the machine goes chunk, and the glass comes down and it opens up and the red glass goes in. Then the piston like this goes down and forms what you're going to make. We came in at 4 o'clock, everything's running good. Production on all the lines, the wine glass, the little baby jars, and the big, was it 31, was by the mold shop. They were making the meter covers. This was 4 o'clock. I took over from the batch man, and I was responsible for all the chemicals and up on the tank to make sure it stayed hot and to make sure that the same amount of glass was going in all the time, because there was 2 feeds and they often plugged up, and then the glass level started going down. And when it went down, it affected their pressure, so I had to keep it up there. It came pretty close to supper time, about 6 o'clock. Started with the wine glasses. They would go, and they called me down. What's going on? I said, I don't know, it's your machine. Then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And pretty soon, glass did not come out when it was cold like that. It went into the machine to be made into whatever product, like men's shaving cream. It was white and foamy and sticky, but it looked like basically toothpaste. You couldn't do a thing with it. And finally, the superintendent sent everybody home about 9:30, all the packing room. They were cleaned out the layers of any goodware, and they weren't getting any more because this front end had tried everything, and they're still getting shaving cream. I got a call next morning to go in with Edsel Steen. He was second in charge, but he basically ran that plant. I learned that from in the payroll. George Crow was there. 2 head guys that I never did know their name in a nice suit. They were in from Montreal head office. And they called me in and said, what did you do? I'm no different than any other glass worker there. I just did my job. But something sure the heck went wrong. Like I said, it looked like white men's shaving cream. Finally, we just shut the tank off and left the tank. The front end guys cleaned up their machines and they went home. And they phoned everybody, we don't need you till the next day. That's at 8 o'clock in the morning when I walked in, I was in the office. I had shut down a whole plant. I had sent 1,287 employees, hourly, and staff home. And then they called them all and said, we don't need you the next day either, because we still got a whole tank full of shaving cream. We don't know what is wrong. Finally, they got maintenance to open it up, and they got it drained down a ways. And they told me to get 3 of these when I could get glass. This one I have at home. I don't know where it is. I have one. This one I also brought home, lunch pail special. It is part of the museum, and they couldn't find it, and the curator went looking for it, and she's got it for today, and I'm very proud of that. And the third one went to Montreal for inspection. What is in here? And what they found is during the day, one of the ingredients is limestone, and one of them is soda ash, both white. Each an individual bin, and like when you ladies bake, you need some of this and some of that, and they had it perfect by a computer, and it made glass. Except we put a whole truckload of soda ash in the limestone bin. And limestone makes the glass, but to make it clearer, one of the ingredients was soda ash. Well, it just made it foam like pop. So we took it out, and they took only limestone and borax and some of the other chemicals, and they just kept putting it in and taking some of the glass out and putting it in until they got it like this. This is slightly yellowish. That was great. We didn't need it clear. We just needed solid. Then they called me in at the end of that. They're going to now hire back, first of all, the front end to get things warmed up, and then the employees to sort it and package it. They called in the technicians. They were running around first not figuring out what was wrong. They were trying to help me. And now they were in trying to get everything, the settings back to what they should be for glass to be made from molten into these products. And I got called into the office, again with all the dignitaries there. Plus, I'd like to name 4 people, if I can remember them. Norm Yacht, C Shift. Art DeChamp. Lee Roberts. And Kenny Foster. They were in charge of the shifts. They were all sitting in a row, and I was to sit with them. And Mr. Steen walked in, and he could be a very frightening person. He walked in, and he called me up to the front, and one by one, He called those superintendents up to the front. He said, you argued and went down Mr. McLean's throat because he made you shaving cream, and it's his fault. And you were after him because your whole shift went apart. And I want you to know there's not a darn thing Ron McLean could do, because we had a whole tank full of limestone with soda ash, about 5 times much more than it should have been. We now have glass, we now have it clear, and we are now back in business. And I want each of you to stand, shake Mr. McLean's hand, and apologize. And you know, I never forgot after that, the head boss of the glass company stood up for an employee. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice background information. I said to Caitlin when we first started to set this up, the Glassfax members want to experience something that you don't read about in books, because that's basically our knowledge level. And you're providing us information way beyond what you read in a book. Thank you. So again, the next items, here comes Kathy. The next items I'm picking up, I don't know whose they are, but we're going to find out. Kathy Wilson.
Okay, I'm not as eloquent as the rest. These belong to my husband, Don, who could not come today. And he's going to regret this because he wanted to listen to all the experience that you were talking about. He's got John Taylor, Walkerville, Ontario, Windsor, 1935. John Taylor was captain in the Walkerville Fire Department. It looks like Don got this in the 1990s in Windsor. He's wondering if this was a Sydenham glass piece. And it says John Taylor, Walkerville. Okay, so I don't know if that rings a bell to any. And then who has it?
So is there an answer to that
Yes.
question? Can any of you identify it as a Wallaceburg paperweight?
Hard to know. It was made for someone in Walkerville, which is Windsor. Hiram Walker? Hiram Walker was Walkerville. This one is Home Sweet Home to Mother. He bought it in 2010. Finds that it's an odd green tinge, so he's not sure whether it's from the sun or whether there was some glass mixed in that, if these were also a Wallaceburg production. So I'm going to pick your brains, anyone familiar with any of these pieces. Thank you.
So sorry, Kathy, we seem to be drawing blanks on that, but perhaps you can take a closer look at them later on, or Kathy, I'd suggest that you maybe make contact with Jamie McDougall. He has a pretty good eye for Wallaceburg paperweights. Next item, Diane Cruxton's piece.
Well, this is the beaver that you usually see facing the one direction. I've never found him facing that way, but I understand he's made in Wallaceburg. I don't have a top on here because it's the wrong top, so I want to be very accurate. That's all I know about him. All these antidotes that have been mentioned, I will tell a little antidote, because I never usually just say 1 or 2 sentences. I'm sorry, I'll make it shorter. Those people that know me understand that. I also had a gem sealer. The smaller sealers are not up high, on a shelf. They are, unfortunately, well, they're not now. Unfortunately, they were all put in, I think, during one of our family get-togethers, and the little ones were washed and put down where all the plastic containers are. So when you're finished with dinner, everybody in the family takes bits and pieces home. I have a feeling that my gem sealer is in somebody else's house, maybe with gravy in it or cranberry sauce. And I didn't realize that until this morning when I'm living east of Toronto, very quickly trying to find it. And I didn't have time to phone my daughter or my son and say, or my grandson, and say, do you have a gem sealer? I gotta take it in 5 minutes, you know, to get to Wallaceburg on time. So that's my little antidote. I'm sure I will find it, but I was glad to see them are already, you know, the gem sealers are already here at Wallaceburg, and I appreciated seeing the original ones. Thanks.
Can anyone add information to the beaver jar? No takers? The one on the... Next item, Sid's goblet.
Before we get onto that, we were talking about fruit jars. I did some research on a gentleman named Doolittle who patented fruit jars and had some made here. And there was an article in one of the papers, I believe it's in Chatham. I've got to be careful. I don't want you going and knocking down any churches. That Doolittle jar from the Syndenham glass factory had been used to, they put documents in it, sealed it, and put it in the cornerstone of the church. I don't want to say which one it was, but it's a Presbyterian church, so I don't know how many there are around here. But I don't want to hear about anybody knocking the cornerstone out to find it. But that was kind of cool. I'll dig that up and send that to you. This one's, I've showed this to Glassfax before, and it's got a little story to it, and that's what it is a story, or a hearsay. There was a gentleman named Ed McLean. He was a pretty significant goblet collector. He lived in London. And he used to haunt the Wallaceburg area. He used to like to come and go through the cullet pile and just see what he might find out there. And at one point in time, he had a set of 6 of these goblets. They're a pattern called Philly. It was made by the Diamond Glass Company, Dominion, this pattern in Montreal. It was also made in the United States, but this color is a very unusual color. It's a beer bottle brown. And the story that I heard, I didn't know Mr. McLean, but I knew of him, was that he found a set of 6 of these in Wallaceburg. And he'd been told that they were made in Wallaceburg and that they were made in a press mold, obviously. And the press molds didn't show up here until I think the 1920s. And that they did them in the beer bottle, brown. I can account what he did was he bought them. He sold some to major goblet collectors, all of them in Glassfax. You're looking at that later. You'll have to wait. I can account for 4 of them. I don't know where the other 2 went. I think Tom King got one, and I don't know where the other one went. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't end up in Ottawa. Ottawa being or Montreal, one of the Glassfax centers. But anyways, I brought that just because of the connection, possible connection to Wallaceburg. If it was made here, it had to be made with the press molds, the actual manual press machines that were brought here in the 20s. There's one picture downstairs that there's a press in operation, so I doubt that they were used very long, and it might have just been, I won't say after hours because that's not the reality, but they might have been just testing out the press and said, gather me some amber, Or somebody might have said, you know, I'd like to have a set of those. I think Roger was telling me about a story where not everything made it out the front door of the factory, some of it made out the back door. So. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, that's the story behind it. I don't know if it's true or not, but I thought it was kind of interesting to share.
Would anyone like to add more information to the piece? Roger? Please come on up. Just while we're waiting, any questions coming to us on chat? Okay. No, come on over here to the mic. Well, that's okay. Let them hear the conversation.
Is it gonna rim on?
That's got a rim on it.
No, that's pressed.
That off a press or it was off a 28?
It's probably side lever. He probably, maybe Turkey made it.
Turkey Daniels?
Turkey Daniels. Remember used to run the side lever?
Would that make us, oh yeah, well, that went to the, they'd have to go through the blazer then.
Well, it looks like it was, but, because it's not rough. It's been glazed,
Yeah, through the blazer.
which I guess might mean that it was a production item, and I never saw that colored glass in our plant at all.
Me either.
Or even laying around, even in the old,
I never
museum.
ever seen that design either.
No.
We never know it. Not that I know of.
Like I said, it's just a story that I heard secondhand.
Yeah,
I didn't hear it from Ben McLean. I heard
yeah.
it from one of the people he talked about.
It had to be made on a press machine, all right, but it went through a glazer.
Smooth the top ring.
Yeah, well, this thing, when it goes through a glazer, it's a long glazer with fire. And the fire is like burners all the way down. They put a heat on this. And this thing will be turning around on a cup
Okay,
while it's going through the glazer. That's why it makes it smooth and takes the burr edges off.
okay.
So the same thing with the bottom. But this bottom is round just the same as the top. I got an idea that whoever made this on a machine or whatever, if they glazed the top halfway through the glazer, somebody would have to grab it and put it on the cup that way, and the other burners would be on the bottom part to put the glaze on.
Okay.
And the other glazer would glaze the rest of this.
Okay,
So I think it was made off of a machine, but I've never seen it in our plant.
okay.
So I don't know if it was made at another factory in the States or whatever, but it's a nice item. But I've never seen it made at our plant.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. The chat line question.
Yep, we have Wesley Andreas, who is a Glassfax member from Edmonton, Alberta, wants to know of any of the workers, what was the most challenging item or production area?
Who wants to handle that question? Repeat the question, please.
Most challenging item or production area?
Come on.
Working in batch, I remember for 3 shifts per day, and we would run 3 days meter covers. I would say that was a challenge. And they sent those molds to Montreal because they had specialists. And I remember when they were done with it, they sent it back to Wallaceburg and said, don't ever send that back here. And our Wallaceburg boys worked with it until it was perfect. And then it was made in Wallaceburg, and that was our motto with any product we made.
So can I just clarify, meter covers would be the round, about 6 inches in diameter? Side of the house, electric flow, hydrometer, electric flow into the house. Yep. Through the glass. So part of the answer there, just for those of you streaming, they had to be pristine so that the meter reader could look through the glass and pick up. Yes. Thank you. I should mention that was Wesley from Edmonton, Alberta. He's a Glassfax member of District X, very supportive of our information and our exchange. We have never met him face to face. And he has never met us, likewise. But he's very actively involved, and yes, thank you for the question. Maybe I'll go with both of these together, being as I brought them, and I think if you've looked at the display downstairs, you'll recognize that these are commemorative bottles. This one in particular is a commemorative bottle that was presented to an individual upon his retirement from probably Dominion Glass or possibly, well, this one is obviously Dominion Glass. This one I brought in particular because this is the retirement bottle for Tom King. Tom King's been mentioned already as the founder of Glassfax. The Glassfax logo and his reference to being the founder of Glassfax is on the back of it, dated 1867, which Sid was talking to you about earlier. Oh, and I believe there are a series of 10 in the collection. I have a list. I should have looked at my list before I asked the question. So this one now is going to take it in a little different direction because this is a commemorative bottle, not so much a retirement bottle, but in the base of it, it has the reference 1913 to 1988 Dom Glass Inc. 75th anniversary. And I know next to nothing about this, so I'm throwing it out there to the people from Wallaceburg. Can you add to the information? Roger, you're looking. Yes, it has. Well, and in fact, this shape is the Dom Glass logo. Yeah. That's a good question. Roger doesn't know how many of these were made, and it could have been significant. I've heard that when it comes to the retirement bottles, there were very few made. In fact, there may have only been enough made to place on the banquet table. Here comes Roger. Come on, tell the story. No, come on up here so they can. Come on, you two guys, get up here. No, come to the mic.
I don't believe that either one of those bottles ever made in production. I believe they were made as a sample, and
for one hit.
like there were many of these made, not many. Only you had to be somebody to get a bottle made. You get lots of us got a tumbler with your name on it, but you had to be somebody to get your glass on you get your face on a bottle. But
I think we're long enough to get a tumbler.
But as you say, this one has the Dom glass.
Glass.
Prior to that, the Diamond D was the one that we all kind of grew up with.
There's no Diamond D on it, so it's just Dom Glass.
Well,
There's
yeah.
no Diamond D on this one, see?
Yeah, that's probably for Tom because
He was a big shot.
Tom was somebody.
We weren't somebody, were we?
No,
No.
Okay, now, whoa, don't you two guys disappear. There's been some comment about special anniversary service watches.
Yeah.
like this.
And yours, okay, that's what I wanted to see. So, tell us about the watches.
This one here?
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah, ticks.
Yeah, come on.
Sometimes.
Give me a little more information. You shared it downstairs.
Well,
When I was 15 years old, I started at the glass factory. Oh. When I was 15 years old, I started at the glass factory. So when time come for a gold watch, for a 25-year watch, I went into the superintendent's office, they called me in. And Don Truan was the superintendent at the time from Wallaceburg here. And I walked in and sat down, and he had the watch, and he looked at me, and he looked at the watch, and he said, "You're not old enough," he says, "to get a watch like this." I said, "Why not?" He said, "You got to be older to get a watch like this. You're not that old." I said, "Well, it's funny, I started in 1951, and that's 1977, so I said, that's 25 years. And he didn't believe me for a while. But that's what I started, and that's how old I was when I got it. So that's mine.
Well, I sure can't beat that, because I was 17 and a half. When I got out of high school and went to work in the business, I have actually two of these. One's a pocket watch that I got from Dominion Glass, and this is a 40-year service from Libby.
I know who talks more than me. If I'm not mistaken, correct me, Gerald, they put these out when we went from Dominion Glass to Dom Glass.
What's the date on that?
There's no date, it's just the insignia. You know, on the bottom? 88. If my memory's right, that was to celebrate, we changed our name.
When they changed the corporate.
That's what it is.
Thank you. A swan with color. Sue Marshall. Swim right up here.
We really received a notice to bring our favorite piece of Wallaceburg glass. Well, this has been around since ever I could remember at my grandmother's house. And I lived there with her for a couple of years, and this is the only piece of Wallaceburg glass that I ever heard of was a swan. And so it's been a terrific memory for me. I keep looking at yard sales when I come through Wallaceburg, but I haven't seen any that were like 25 cents or anything, but I still keep looking, and I hope you will too.
Thanks, Sue. This is a piece that I recently picked up, and the only reason I picked it up was that it has right in the base, made in Canada, and it has the diamond D in it. And I have been through books and catalogs, and so has Sid, including Eaton's catalogs, and cannot find anything about it. So, I sort of thought that it was a powder dish. Would have possibly had a lid. There is a rim on it. It feels like it would have had a lid, and here comes Roger with the answer.
I haven't got the answer, but where's the diamond D at?
Right, buried in the stipple.
Oh, right in the middle.
Right in the stipple. And there's in the made in Canada.
Yeah. Is there a dot at all? I was looking at the dot. I can't hardly see a dot. Maybe you can
Okay, sorry, we're off camera right now. Hang in there. Here they come. Back up to the mic.
I feel like a technical advisor, Roger.
Wallaceburg was on the right-hand side here, the diamond D.
Yeah, the stippling, you can't tell if there's a dot. Yeah, Hamilton was on the hill, Montreal was on the left, and Red Cliff was on the bottom.
And we were on the right-hand side.
Yes.
But you can't.
Sorry, explain what you're looking for there.
Oh, on the diamond D, on the bottom of every glass, the diamond D, there'd be 4 dots. Now the top dot, the one on the left would be Montreal.
No, well, yeah, it eventually would, but there'd only be one on each article.
Yeah, there's only one
Yeah.
dot on each
Now-
item that's made.
It was easy to remember Wallaceburg, because Wallaceburg was on the right, and
Right-hand
we were
side.
always right.
You're always right.
So, and then Hamilton was on the top, because Hamilton was on the hill.
And Montreal was on the
Montreal
left.
was on the left, and then
Red Cliff was on the
Cliff
bottom.
on the bottom.
So there was 4 companies, 4 dots, and that's where they were originated on the diamond. So we can tell who made it by looking at where the dot is. If anybody sent their junk from one factory to us and said, you guys made this, if we looked at the bottom and said, that ain't our dot, that's your dot, send it back.
So you were commenting that it was a powder dish. Can you add to that? No. 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 Come on. Here, I'll even hold your hand. Come on up. Come on. You can. That's fine, but you know something about it. Please share it.
Well, ladies would have these on their night table, and they would have powder in them, and they would have a metal lid on top of it. And that's what it was.
So might it also have a little powder puff in it?
Yep.
It would.
Could have,
So it would
maybe.
have probably been sold with the powder and the powder puff and then the metal lid on top.
Because I have similar, but not the same.
And the piece you have. I'm not trying to lead you on. I'm just trying to draw all that knowledge
Okay.
out of you. The piece that you have, do you know if it was made here?
I didn't care.
Okay, we're done. Thank you. I sort of left the largest and the most intimidating and the most unusual piece until last. Here we go.
Okay, this little lovely piece was found in what we call our dungeon, which a lot of unneeded or unknown artifacts would usually end up. So we dug this up. We started cleaning out our dungeon lately, and this is one of the pieces that we brought up. We're kind of baffled as to what it actually is, but it is quite large, quite thick glass with a ground surface on the bottom. Now, I would imagine something like this might have been used as a vacuum jar or something in a lab of some kind. But if anybody has any knowledge as to what this might be, this is one of our items here at the museum that we just have no idea what it was used for. So has anybody got an answer to that? Shot glass? That's pretty big. Yeah, it is very heavy, very thick glass. So I'm kind of thinking insulator or a vacuum jar or something like that. And I'm going to call on Kaylin for a second. I don't know if she has anything in her records. It does have an accession number on it, and I'm not sure what the records actually tell us about it. So what have you found as far as this goes?
I don't know. It's a mystery. But I was just going to note the edge here. Can I have this?
Yep.
It's not finished for our glass worker friends. Does that mean it never left the factory before it came to the museum, or would it have left the factory like this with an unsanded edge?
Yeah,
That's the other thing. There's no defining marks on it.
yeah, so we don't even know if it was actually made here in the glass or where it actually came from, but it's just an interesting piece.
So it's interesting. This was actually found without any identifying donor information. We don't know when it got here, who brought it here. It just kind of appeared in one of our storage areas, and then we cleaned it, and we thought, this is interesting. But yeah, if anyone comes across anything that looks like this, please call us.
Thank you.
Now we've gone through most of the items. I have one more thing I'd like to share with you. I was a watchman making rounds. We had a key that punched a hole, and they could tell you how far you went from B to C. And we would go through the whole factory. If you're very long, you had to explain it. Now that could be a simple thing is a pallet had tipped over in the warehouse, and I'd have to get a hold of the foreman and a lift truck and bring it in, and the repack crew would quickly repack it. But in the spring, in shed 9, the oldest one away at the back, had 1,000 little toads and frogs crawling around. And we would stop and look at them, and it would take forever to go through the shed without stepping on them. And I put that in my report one time. And I remember, I believe her name was Doris. Anybody could correct me? The secretary for Mr. Crow? Doris, yeah. Dora, thank you. She got a big kick out of that, and I remember that raised a thing. One thing that I'd like to share about the glass factory that it never got out is on July the 4th. We always planned our supper on top of the tower. And we'd go up there on just a box, probably with ware in it, but we'd take it up the elevator and go. Then you had to go up a catwalk for the 4th floor to the top. And we'd put it out there at exactly about 9 o'clock at night. And you were looking straight down into the park in Detroit while they set off their fireworks. And it never cost us a dime.
So we've been down the table of show and tell. We're on the verge of wrapping up. Any other comments, any other memories that you wish to share with the group? Please stand up. Let me know. Come forward. I'll hold your hand and bring you up if I have to. Dave, come on back up. Anything else on chat? Thank you. Dave?
This probably falls into the realm of anecdote. We were at a wedding for one of my nephews, and we were sitting beside another guest at the wedding, and she says, "Oh, I'm from Wallaceburg." So we got chatting, what do you do? "Oh, I worked in the office at Don Glass." So we said, "Oh, yeah," and mentioned about my uncle. And then she said, "I was there the day that they got notice that the factory was closing." She said, "I went in the next day into the office, and all of this wonderful glass that was in the office disappeared overnight." Do any of you have any recollection of that or seeing that? Anybody idea in terms of where it might have gone? I'd be interested to find out.
It was just a guess, but I know a lot of that samples with the instructions of how to do it properly, which all our gentlemen in the front end worked very hard with the American counterparts, went with the wine glass machines and the other machines that went either to Toledo or they just vanished to head office. Because I remember a lot of samples that I was in charge of color. We would go from green drinking cups, the Harvest ones, they hold good beer, to blue. And sometimes I also had the other tank. It was making honey gold, the salt and pepper shakers that were famous in all the restaurants. Those samples all of a sudden one night just disappeared from around our little office up at the front end. And I was told they went to head office. So I believe they collected the best of the best samples and didn't tell our people what they were going to do. Another antidote while you're here, I was on security with Felix Sterling and Sam Stevenson, and Larry Sterling was the 4 of us. We were working the Christmas of 99. Is that when it closed? 99. So it'd be 98. And we worked through Christmas and through New Year's. And we allowed the construction people in, and they were bringing in constant material to build a new lunchroom for all the maintenance crew. Theirs had deteriorated. It was under the new house, and it was brick, and it just couldn't be fixed. So they were building them a new lunchroom, a bathroom, the whole bit. And we just kept letting them in, and they were paid to have that done when we came back on the 2nd of January. And all that money went into all that new stuff. and they never told us, and they could not let it out of the office, that on the second, they called us in and said, we're closing the factory, and they already knew that that was just wasted money that they couldn't talk about. And I believe it was close to about $100,000 they threw away knowing that we were going to close anyway. I just thought a lot of people didn't know that behind the scenes.
Thank you. Kathy? Anything further to add? I'm going to invite Kathy, the Director of District 4, to make some closing comments.
Thank you, Carl. I want to thank Kaylin for working with Carl and all your folks here at the museum, and thank you for the tours. Thank you so much to all the glass workers that showed up today. Your what you know is information is invaluable, and this is archival information that'll be lost, and I hope you're telling someone, telling a family member, tell them the story, get them to write it down, you know, because it's fabulous hearing your experience that you had, that some of you were employed with this company for so long, which is an anomaly anymore. So we appreciate you spending your time this afternoon and helping us learn more about your company and your work. Thank you.
So just on Kathy's note, one of the values of persevering with the focus of the live stream on this particular page is in this particular location is that we have a YouTube link on our glass site, and this entire event has been recorded and will be registered on YouTube and made available to the public. So in many ways, the information you've shared is now recorded and will be there and can be used as educational value by many other people. This pretty well wraps up our program, Caitlin, unless there's anything further. We're obviously in real good time. I'd invite you to go back downstairs and spend some time at the museum with the displays. And again, to all of the glass workers that have participated in this meeting, thank you very, very much, and thank you for sharing your information and your stories.